Hi, and welcome to Pints with Aquinas. Why am I laughing? I think I don't know. So we're off to a good start. Today, I'm going to be sharing what Thomas Aquinas has to say about why stuff can't make you happy. And I'll also be looking at what Jerry Seinfeld has to say regarding stuff. Oh, golly. From his new book, Is This Anything? This is obviously not a paid promotion, although it would be pretty cool if Jerry Seinfeld would pay for me to do that. But I got this for Christmas, and I just thought terribly insightful, so I had to do it. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take a look at what Thomas Aquinas has to say, and then obviously to a lesser extent, but certainly more funny, what Jerry Seinfeld has to say. I want to take a look at some of the comments we got yesterday on my interview with Tim Gordon on why Catholics can't reject the Second Vatican Council. That was an amazing episode, I thought. We had over 15,000 views so far, which is pretty great. A lot of good feedback. And we'll take some questions from patrons. And then just for fun, I want to share with you 5 reviews that we've received over on Pints with Aquinas. 4 of them are very negative because, I could share 5 reviews about how wonderful I am, but, that's not fun. So let's do 4 that are super negative. These are some of the most negative ones I could find. And we'll call it a day. I hope you're having a great Christmas season. Also, I need to tell you about this. There's a bunch I've got to tell you. First of all, this Saturday, my wife and I are going to be doing a live stream, and we have a big announcement that we want to make. And by big announcement, I don't mean like a kind of announcement that's sort of interesting. No, I actually mean like this is going to be a really big announcement. So I hope that y'all can be there and join us for that as I scroll through this. And then also, I need to let you know at the start of January, probably January 9th, we're going to be hosting a new 5-part series. Dr. Andrew Swafford will be teaching it on salvation history. We obviously have a ton of stuff at patreon.com/MattFrad, but by becoming a patron right now, you'll get access to that. He's going to give us the overarching narrative from Genesis to Revelation. All right, so let's see. Before we delve into this topic, I want to say thank you to our sponsor, Ethos Logos Investments. Now, you might be thinking, okay, this is something that adults do or people with money. This is not something that I do. Why are you telling me about this? Because I think it's something you can do, and I think it's something that responsible adults should consider doing. Investing in something more than a 401k, which Ethos Logos Investments does. Go check these guys out because they are solidly Catholic. You might think investing sounds complicated. It's not. In the link in the description, elinvestments.net/pints, you can click that, and it's like a 5-minute interview I did on why people should seriously consider investing right now and why you should invest with Ethos Logos Investments because it's like a solidly Catholic company. Ethos Logos Investments' mission is to enable Catholics to invest according to their faith, values, and morals. So, you're not going to be profiting from evils like pornography, abortifacients, embryonic stem cell research, human trafficking, or environmental depletion when you invest with Ethos Logos Investments. So go check them out, elinvestments.net/pints. Click the link in the description, elinvestments.net/pints. All right, so I'm really excited to talk about this topic with you today. I just completed a book on what Thomas Aquinas has to say about happiness with Ignatius Press. I submitted it several months ago now, but these things often take some time. And I'm really excited. I think it's a really good book. We look at what Thomas Aquinas has to say about happiness. Can we attain it in this life? Why? Why not? To what degree? What won't bring us happiness? And that's kind of what we're going to be looking at today. This comes from the first part of the second part, question 2. Yeah, question 2. Just check this out because this is pretty cool. So this is a really great question to read through. If you've never read Aquinas before and you're afraid of his sort of Thomistic jargon or Aristotelian, I guess, metaphysical jargon, this one would be a good question for you to dive into. Because he's asking the question, okay, do these things make man happy? Does wealth make man happy? That's what we'll be looking at today. Does honor? What about fame or glory? What about power? Surely that makes man happy. What about goods of the body? What about pleasure? What about goods of the soul? Surely goods of the soul would make man happy. Is it found in any created good? And Aquinas is going to say no to all of these, and he's going to nuance why that's the case. But it's an excellent question to go through, as I say, if you've never read Aquinas before. But in this book coming out with Ignatius Press, who knows when it'll be out, maybe next year, we delve into that a great deal. Today we're going to look at, does happiness consist in wealth? Now, you might be thinking, okay, wealth, I thought this had to do with stuff or things. Well, he's going to address that in this question here. Whether man's happiness consists in wealth. Let's just take a look at some of the objections that he offers, that he wants to respond to, not because we'll go through the entire article necessarily, but just because it's fun. It would seem that man's happiness consists in wealth, for since happiness is man's last end, it must consist in that which has the greatest hold on man's affections. Now, this is wealth. For it's written in Ecclesiastes, all things obey money. Therefore, man's happiness consists in wealth. Let's look at another objection here. Further, since the desire for the sovereign good never fails, it seems to be infinite. But this is the case with riches more than anything else, since a covetous man shall not be satisfied with riches. Therefore, happiness consists in wealth. Bugger it. Let's look at one more objection. According to Boethius, in his Consolations, happiness is a state of life made perfect by the aggregate of all good things. Now, money seems to be the means of possessing all things, for, as the philosopher says, money was invented that it might be a sort of guarantee for the acquisition of whatever man desires. Therefore, money consists in wealth. I guess that would actually probably be the most convincing argument. So if Boethius is right, and that a happy life, a perfect life, is made perfect by the aggregate of all good things, then money would do that. Because you might say, well, I want power, or I want sex, or I want status, or I want leisure, like money is the doorway to all of those things, and so therefore money will make you happy. Here's what Aquinas says. And can I just say this? When your mum said to you one day, money won't make you happy, you didn't believe her, because it just sounded sentimental and like something people say, but they don't really think about it. When Aquinas says it, he actually offers an argument for it, and the argument is really convincing. I remember hearing a comedian once say, if God made me a millionaire, I would prove to him that money could make me happy. Or what's that other line from that comedian who says, I know money can't buy you happiness, but it can buy you a jet ski. And people on jet skis, they're not frowning. Here's what Aquinas says. Man's good consists in retaining happiness rather than in spreading it. But as Boethius says, wealth shines in giving rather than in hoarding. For the miser is hateful, whereas the generous man is applauded. Therefore, man's happiness does not consist in wealth. Okay. I don't find that particularly convincing, just prima facie. Let's look at the respondio, though. It is impossible for man's happiness to consist in wealth. For wealth is twofold, as the philosopher says, natural and artificial. Natural wealth is that which serves man as a remedy for his natural wants. All right, so this is basically everything you want that's not money. Aquinas says food, drink, clothing, cars, dwellings, and such like. All right, so that's what he means by natural wealth, that which assists nature. Artificial wealth is that which is not a direct help to nature, as money, but is invented by the art of man for the convenience of exchange as a measure of things saleable. Okay, I just realized the irony of doing an episode on why money won't make you happy and leading with telling you to invest. But money's not evil. The love of money is the root of all evil. Money can be useful, but it cannot make us happy. Now, says Aquinas, it is evident that man's happiness cannot consist in natural wealth. That's everything you want other than like the green stuff, right? Or if you're in Australia, the purple, yellow, blue, different colored note stuff. Why? Okay, so why? Why can't natural wealth make us happy? Aquinas is saying it's evident. Well, why is it evident? He says, for wealth of this kind is sought for the sake of something else, namely support of human nature. Okay, fair enough. So if I want a house, that's in order to support my human nature. I want a beautiful house. Maybe it's for that reason. Maybe it's so that I can seem, whatever, impressive to other people. Clothes, cars, food, drink, right? All of this is to support my human nature, sure. Consequently, it cannot be men's last end. Okay, so you have to understand that that's what Aquinas means by happiness. So by happiness, he doesn't mean like feeling super good about something. He means it's for the reason man has been created, like the end for which man was made. The thing that makes us perfect. Natural things, like natural wealth, can't make us happy because we want that to sustain ourselves, to sustain the nature. So it doesn't complete the nature, it sustains it. That's why we want it. For wealth of this kind is sought for the sake of something else, support of human nature. Consequently, it can't be man's last end. Rather, it is ordained to man as to its end. Wherefore, in the order of nature, all such things are below man and made for him, according to Psalm 8:8. So I will not find the fulfillment of all my desires in a jet ski, because it was made subject to me by the manufacturer. That's why it has handles and a seat for my body, right? All of these things, they are below us. They cannot perfect us. They are not our last end. They support our nature. Okay. What about artificial wealth, though? What about things like money? Well, says Aquinas, and this is such a good argument. Like if someone says money can make me happy, they don't actually mean money can make me happy. Why? Because money is for something else. Like suppose you become a millionaire. Somebody drops bags of cash, suitcases filled with unmarked notes at your doorstep. And suppose tomorrow there's some sort of zombie apocalypse and that money is now useless. Okay, you're not like, hey, at least I got all this money, right? So money is for something else. It's not an end in and of itself, right? It is not sought for the sake, it is not sought save for the sake of natural wealth. All right, so those things that we want other than money can't make us happy. And money exists for those things that can't ultimately make us happy. So let me just kind of read this again instead of interjecting after every third word. And as to artificial wealth, it is not sought save for the sake of natural wealth, since man would not seek it except because by its means he procures for himself the necessaries, not necessities, necessaries of life. Consequently, much less can it be considered in the light of the last end. Therefore, it is impossible for happiness, which is the last end of man, to consist in wealth. Now, at this point, you might say, okay, fine, but that objection that Aquinas offered earlier on about the kind of aggregate of all good things, that's what we're talking about. Like, obviously, everybody knows if I have money, I'm not going to be happy, but money can give me things. It gives me power, right? And it gives me pleasure, and these things make me happy. Well, actually, Aquinas addresses why they don't make you happy in these different articles within this question. I've linked it below in the description. I really would recommend pouring yourself a hot cup of coffee, lighting up a cigar, sitting back and reading through this. This is absolutely amazing stuff. Okay, let's look at that objection and response before we look at Seinfeld. Okay, so the objection that Aquinas wants to respond to is again from Boethius, from the Consolation of Philosophy, which is such an amazing work. If you haven't read it, you should. It's not a hard read. Happiness is a state of life made perfect by the aggregate of all good things. Now, money seems to be the means of possessing all good things. For as the philosopher says, money was invented that it might be a sort of guarantee for the acquisition of whatever man desires. Therefore, happiness consists in wealth. And Aquinas' objection to this is 2 sentences. Good. All things saleable can be had for money. Not so spiritual things, which cannot be sold. Hence it is written, had an indulgence joke come to mind there. Hence it is written in Proverbs, what doth it avail a fool to have riches, seeing he cannot buy wisdom? You would think that we would have learnt by now that money can't make us happy. I mean, how many celebrities and rock stars and politicians do we need to read about who seem to be living just awful, awful lives? they even tell us themselves, right, that money can't make us happy. And we're always like, well, yeah, it makes sense. You'd bloody say that. You just don't want us to take a bit of your pie. But, I mean, then don't seem terribly happy. It would seem that money, a lot of money, leads to a predictable life, which is a boring life, which might be why the rich are blowing their brains out at an alarmingly faster rate than those who aren't. Anyway, the other thing is, on the opposite side of the spectrum, when you encounter people who are poor, they might be miserable and wretched, just like you might meet rich people who are very happy. But we've also met people who are poor who are terribly joyful. So if riches equaled happiness, we should expect rich people to be happy all the time, or for the most part, and poor people to always be sad, or for the most part. So no one's saying, people who are rich aren't happy, or those who are poor aren't miserable. But if riches equaled happiness and lack of riches equaled wretchedness or sadness, then we shouldn't expect to see poor happy people or rich sad people, but we do. Therefore, obviously, this is not going to work. We keep putting this car back on the track and expecting it to run, but it won't. Riches cannot make us happy, according to Aquinas, because we weren't made for money, we weren't made for natural goods, we were made for God, and only God can make us happy. All right, I got this book for Christmas. Is This Anything by Jerry Seinfeld. It's a compilation of a lot of his jokes, basically. That's all it is. I like Jerry Seinfeld. Obviously, there's seriously problematic content in his show and in some of his stand-up, but that doesn't mean he doesn't have some very interesting things to say. It's also on Audible. I kind of wish I got it on Audible now, because hearing him read it with his comedic timing is way funnier than me reading it. And what I found really interesting, actually, in reading this is it sounds very philosophical. Like when you read some of what Jerry Seinfeld has to say, but you lack the comedic kind of emphasis and time, it just sounds like you're kind of reading a really interesting lecture. So I guess that's my point. I think that's one of the reasons people like Jerry Seinfeld, is what he has to say is like really intelligent. Like he looks at things in a weird sort of way. Anyway, so let's take a look at this. This is a joke of his, which he has titled, "Everything is Garbage." I believe that and again, with me reading this, it's not going to be funny, so don't expect a laugh. I believe that all the objects and possessions that we own really just exist at different stages of becoming garbage. To me, the world is comprised of garbage and pre-garbage. Let's see. I like to walk the streets of New York. If a garbage man says to me, "Love your work," I go right back at you. Because every object on Earth is actually part of a giant, slow parade to the dumpster. Golly! It's just so philosophical when you think about it. Like, we acquire things in order to sustain our nature. That's their purpose. The purpose isn't that thing. If it were that thing, then what he's saying is kind of correct. Like, literally everything in this room is going to be in the garbage heap one day. Everything in your house, everything that's surrounding you right now, including your device that you're watching this on, will be garbage one day. While you're walking into your house excitedly with your shopping bags, the garbage man is driving by in his truck and he looks at you like, "Oh, I'll see you soon." Your home is really just a garbage processing center. You buy new things, you bring them into your house, and you slowly trashify them over time. A new purchase in the house begins its life full of hopes and promise. The box is opened on the kitchen table, the place of honor for the new arrival. You read the instructions. You fill out the registration card. You may even join the club of other idiots that have this thing. You repeat some of this bit is so brilliant. Again, let me just read this as if it's a philosophy textbook. Ready? You repeat some of the lines the salesman used on you, but they don't sound the same when you say them. And you start to realize that maybe you're not going to be quite as keen on drying out fruit and storing it in your basement as you thought you were going to be. So from there, it's demoted to the closet. That's why we have that, so we don't see all the huge mistakes we've made. Hilarious, hilarious, hilarious. I'm not sure how much I can read without being sued, so let's kind of skip down a little bit. And then he talks about how, like, this slow demotion, right? It's in the basement, then it's in your closet, and it's on the floor in your closet. You're basically stepping on this thing, and then eventually it goes out to the garage. And once it's in the garage, it's done for. Like, nothing goes out into the garage that ever comes back. It is has slowly become garbage, and it's now on its last legs here. And here he says, really, eBay is the only thing that can save the object at this point. The rubbish, the garbage that you have in the garage. eBay, of course, another great step forward in human culture. Hey, why don't we mail our garbage back and forth to each other? No, Jerry, you don't understand. The things I get on eBay, they're collectibles. Oh, I see. So you purchased this item from a collector who collects these collectibles because even he didn't want it. Or the personal storage area. This is sad. This is really sad. The personal storage area. I have never seen them in Australia. I'm sure they exist, but America, you gotta just, if you have a storage area, get that stuff out and stop paying rent. What are you doing? This is the saddest of all. Now, instead of free garbage that you had, right, you pay rent to visit your garbage. It's like a prison visit. Everything is rusted and broken. You lift up that rolling steel door, make your little speech. Listen, I'm trying to get you guys out of here. There's no place for you in the world right now. That's why you're incarcerated. But I'm working on it, and I'll get you back. This is probably my favorite. This is my favorite part. Everything is thrown out in the end. Even we are thrown out in the end, my friends. And when I hear about someone that died and wanted some important personal possession put with them when they're buried, I'm all for that. Take your crap with you. They say you can't take it with you. I say, let's try. Okay, that is hilarious. That is hilarious. Now, if you were to say to Seinfeld, is this garbage? He would say, yeah, like this is on its way to being garbage. Yes, like everything. But of course, I want this not for its sake. I want this for what it can give me. This Stein will one day be in the garbage tip, or heap. We call it a tip in Australia. But I want it for what it gives me. I want it to sustain my nature through coffee, which I find pleasurable, though it's never actually made me happy, though it's come close. This book here, this phone, this glasses case, like all of it, if we separate it away from the sustenance of our human nature and directing us towards our final goal, in the end, it's just crap. That's all it is. What do you think about that? I would love to hear below what you think about that. Is obviously Jerry is Seinfeld is a comedian, so it's meant to be taken with a grain of salt. But I would love your take on that. I find it hilarious. Okay, now I want to take a couple of questions from our patrons, and then I want to take a look at some comments from yesterday with my interview with Tim Gordon. Randy says, hi Matt, can you share why you sought Thomism and the theological tradition of Aquinas as a way to respond to and examine about questions about the faith? Thanks. I mean, my master's was in sort of a Thomist philosophy, and that's really why I started doing it. So in that sense, it wasn't terribly original, or I just loved Thomas Aquinas. One of the reasons it's cool to examine questions about the faith is that he poses questions about the faith in a way that other spiritual writers and theologians don't necessarily do, right? Here's the question, here's the response. We just saw that today. And so I love it for that reason. Obviously, Aquinas has been hailed as perhaps the premier theologian of the West, even more so than Augustine, or at least on par with him. And so that would be another reason. Todd asks, I've been researching the Eastern Catholic churches. Would it be fair to say that the Byzantine church is more traditional and less liberal progressive than the Latin church? So, I mean, the Byzantine Catholic Church, I attend a Byzantine Catholic Church, never underwent a serious, what do you say? Evolution is probably the wrong word, but change in its liturgy. I mean, there have been changes, but nothing of recent memory to the extent that, the new Mass has been. And so I think for that reason, there's a lot less room for abuse. I'm not saying there aren't abuses in the Byzantine Divine Liturgy. I'm not saying there aren't abuses at, the TLM. But I think it's a lot more difficult to go into enthusiastic levels of abuse that you see sometimes in the Novus Ordo. So, I don't know. I mean, it would depend. I've been to church, Byzantine Catholic churches, and my main critique is this is too Roman. It's like you're bringing in Western traditions in here, whereas you should just be what you are. But I don't know for what that's worth. Bianca Fuller says, regarding stuff not making you happy, any comments on the Protestant prosperity gospel? It seems some Protestants think money and things you can buy with it are an integral part of the spiritual life. How much damage can that do? Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, when you look at the first apostles, you would imagine that if anyone was going to be happy, it would be the initial followers of Christ. And they were happy, but not because of material possessions. In fact, we have good evidence that suggests 2 were martyred. Tradition says that, all but John were, not including Judas, of course. So I'm not sure why we should expect something other. And obviously we have the testimony of the saints who've put their love and trust in God and have despised the world. And I think this is what we're called to do. It's true that money can be a blessing, but it can also be an idol that we worship without recognizing it as such. Bob Appleby, can you comment on the newish trend of minimalism? That's a really interesting question because it does pertain to what we're talking about today. Whenever I see movements in the world that haven't necessarily been kind of imbued with the faith, I see some good in them and I see some bad in them. It was like that with the Me Too movement, right? I saw some good in it. I also saw some bad in it. It's like, yeah, you shouldn't hurt people sexually. You shouldn't abuse them. 100%. And people can speak up about their abuse and help others. Beautiful. But the same people who are saying that are very often saying, but if 2 people willingly degrade each other in pornography or through fornication, this isn't degrading anyway, right? And so with minimalism, like there seems to be like a good thing there because it's like, okay, we don't need all this stuff. Like all this stuff is just cluttering our houses. It's competing for our attention. We don't need it. We want to live a more meaningful life with good quality products that help us. We don't want all this stuff. I think that's good. But like one thing I often find sad is, you probably had a grandma or a grandfather who had things that were passed down to them from their parents, There was this kind of tradition within families. Like this is the china that we set out on nice occasions. Or if we don't set it out, we at least have a nice china cabinet to display it. There was a sense of displaying nice things that we received from other people. The idea of, putting out cutlery that was actually silver or beautiful, that maybe somebody passed down to you. So I can see minimalism being a good thing. I can also see it being a negative thing. Like here's another example. There's a lot of this going around about, these mini houses, these tiny houses. You can go online, type in tiny houses, have a field day. Where you've got people who are basically living in a room like this, and here's where the bed goes, and here's the sink, and it's everything you need. And you're like, okay, but how do you have friends over? Like, what about community? What about opening up your house and, extending hospitality towards people? It doesn't seem there's much room for that. So I suppose, there's good and bad in it. Here are some responses we got from yesterday's show, which, by the way, if you haven't seen, I think it was really great. Tim Gordon and I did an episode on why Catholics can't reject the Second Vatican Council. And yeah, it's already been viewed 15,000 times. I just wanted to go down here, check out some of these comments. I haven't looked at them ahead of time. Yes, I do look at Ben Shapiro and Father Mike Schmitz and Ascension Presents and Jordan Peterson before everybody in the comments points that out like it's something of a revelation. Let's see, Jake Kelly. I haven't always been a fan of Tim Gordon, but ever since TNT dissolved, Tim has been great. Great job. Keep it up. You both are doing so much good. That's very nice. Lewis says, this was a very good show. Matt, thank you for having the insight of having someone like Tim Gordon on the show. You're right. Someone from Catholic Answers would have not reached me the same way. But having Tim on defending the Second Vatican Council documents was a great idea because I was struggling with this question for some time. Thank you. Man, that's beautiful. Gabriel says, just loved this interview. Really, I used to listen to TNT and was very sad by their decision to split up. But man, this discussion was awesome. Timothy showed so much care to be fair to any criticism he finds reasonable and to point out in an honest manner what he discovered to be a misleading message. Kevin says, I love how he explained trads, then he just glosses over super wonky theological concepts. Please slow down for the yellow belts. Wow, so refreshing to see someone seeking truth rather than pursue an agenda. It was really cool. I actually joked yesterday with my patrons. I'm like, okay, so I'm going to be having Timothy Gordon back on the show. We'll see what happens. Because if you remember, when I interviewed him on the Matt Fradd show, it was like 10 minutes in and he referred to women as chubby 3 times. And I was sitting like a deer in headlights, like, what's happening? Wasn't my finest moment. Definitely wasn't my worst. So I was joking with my wife before yesterday's interview. She's like, so are you going to call just women chubby today or both women and men? And I joked. I went, just women today. Those of you who didn't see that show, you've got no idea what I'm talking about. You know, Timothy Gordon has some controversial things to say and obviously some things I disagree with and wish he would state them differently. But yesterday's show was amazing. So I was actually a little nervous about having him on the show. I'm like, okay, I'm getting ready. If he's going to say something about chubby women, I'm going to have to step in. But man, he's such an insightful guy, and I think he's really grown a lot. And I'm just so glad to have him on our team. So go check out that if you haven't already. Okay, are you excited to look at my worst reviews on iTunes? Well, you better be, because here we bloody go. I scrolled down on iTunes. We've got a ton of reviews, by the way. If you listen to this on Apple Podcasts, Pints with Aquinas iTunes. Let's have a look. How many reviews do we have? How many bloody reviews? 3.9 thousand. That's beautiful. And we have 4.9 stars. Glory. But here are some of the worst ones. Ready, set, boom. My sister recommended me the recent podcast that supposedly debunked veganism, claiming it didn't strawman and it had reasonable justification for the consumption of animal products. I'm sorry to say that your representation of the vegan philosophy was completely inadequate and during several instances misleading. I promise you, Peter Singer has never advocated for animal rights to vote. You are allowed to maintain your arbitrarily constructed hierarchy and say, for example, that humans are completely superior to animals. That doesn't allow us to deprive them of dignity, respect, and compassion. When we financially demand the death of an animal, we do it because we enjoy the taste and convenience of eating its flesh. In a developed society, it is generally unnecessary to eat animal products, and the sensory pleasure and convenience behind their consumption are simply not appealing justifications for cruelty. All right, fair enough. Thanks very much. Maybe we didn't do a good job giving the other side, so I apologize for that. Listen to this one. No matter how eloquently stated, garbage is garbage. So speaking of garbage, he, I guess that's me, first provides an answer, then crafts the fitting question. I don't mean to do this like total jerk voice. I'm aware that I'm doing that. This person probably doesn't sound like that. Really does a good job laying out a fallacious argument using pseudo-philosophy, misrepresentation, straw man arguments from incredulity, special pleading, ad nauseum. If you're into the supernatural, magical thinking and fallacious arguments, this is for you. Nice bit of sarcasm there at the end. Oh man, I can't read all this. This is too much. This devout Catholic says no. Okay, I just want to point out that when somebody says they're a devout Catholic, sometimes, and I don't know because I haven't read through this, sometimes it's like when someone says, I went to Catholic school, and you're like, oh gosh. All right, so what do you disagree about? I've been listening for several years. Oh, wow, that's awesome, because Pints has only been, I think, 5 years now, so that's amazing. This guy's been listening so long. there have been some very insightful episodes. Okay, that's very nice. But then Matt plants a little comment that destruct his point. Comments that destruct his point. I've had enough of his personal attacks on other prominent Catholic theologians and scholars. Have I done that? Probably Father James Martin. Priests, educators, young Catholic, outreach to marginalized people. Okay, yeah. The Pope Francis and general... Okay, there we are. Society of Jesus. Yeah, I think it's James Martin. To be fair, there are some good discussions peppered throughout the years and moments that elevate Catholic understanding of St. Thomas Aquinas and the Catechism, but I'm tired of Matt speaking for as St. Thomas, and I'm sure tired of him accusing those with whom he disagrees as heretics. Cool. Okay, one cool thing about this guy is that he's obviously thinks I've done a lot of bad things, but he's also interjecting what he likes, which I think is really cool. It's a really cool, balanced way to criticize somebody. I want Catholic Church that is full, vibrant, resilient, through discourse of thought and open to sinners and saints. The Catholic Church I don't want is an empty church, but for the pious and like-minded think tank occupying a few front pews. Yeah, fair enough. I don't either. But heresy still exists. It's still a thing. We need to call it out. So I would imagine if I call somebody out and I say, like, this is heresy, what you could do is say, no, it's not, and here's why. And that way I would have to say sorry. Actually, there's been times on my episode where I've taught heresy and actually had to apologize. So it wasn't heresy because I wasn't intending it and I wasn't sort of resolute in that opinion. But you know what I mean? Like, I've said false things. So, all right, let's go to this one. Not for serious people. And this guy's called Professor... What's this? I can't read it all together. Professor... Okay, doesn't matter. Not for serious people. Matt Fradd is not a serious Aquinas scholar. Fact check true. There is excellent Aquinas content elsewhere. Fact check true. And I encourage people to seek it out. I agree with all of that. All right, let's end on a 5-star review so I can feel good about myself. One of the best podcasts out there. Thank you. Let's see. Oh, okay. He's following on from the title. One of the best podcasts out there. You into dope theology that lifts the soul? The reason this is funny is the last guy's like, this guy is not a serious Aquinas scholar. And my fans apparently have proven him right because a 5-star review's with, y'all into dope theology? You into dope? These are my people. You into dope theology that lifts the soul? Of course you are. Listen to Matt Fradd beautifully explain Thomas theology that is both profound yet accessible. I support him on Patreon. Thank you. And I am proud I support such a wonderful man he doesn't know me well, through whom our Lord speaks through every episode. Wow, what an endorsement. A lot of his episodes have featured Dominicans talking about various subjects and has inspired me to, look at that, to look into the Dominican order after I graduate college. Man, that's beautiful. There you are. You can't please everybody all the time, but you can please this bloke who's looking into the Dominicans. If you have not yet reviewed Pints with Aquinas, you might want to consider going over there, especially if you're angry, because some of those are fun. Some of those are fun to read. Do us a favor, if you have not yet subscribed to this channel, please do subscribe. We are at like 98 point something thousand, and it would be really sweet to get to 100,000 subscribers. Also, this Saturday night, my wife and I are going to be sitting here, drinking a bottle of wine, and chatting with you about some extraordinarily exciting things that are happening with Pints with Aquinas. Let me just say, it's big. I don't know. I don't want to give it away, but it's actually a really big deal. It's not like, hey, we're going to do an extra episode every week. It's pretty life-altering in a way for me and my wife. So I think you're not going to want to miss it. That's all I'm going to say. But be sure to click subscribe and that bell button and join us this Saturday night. My wife and I, as I say, we'll be having a drink with y'all. Maybe pull out a drink yourself and have a chat. Good. Finally, I just want to say one last time that in the new year, Dr. Andrew Swafford will be hosting a new 5-part video series on salvation history. So if you are not yet a patron, go over to patreon.com/MattFrad. You get books sent to your door, beer steins sent, stickers. What else do you want? I know. How about a 5-part video series on salvation history? Yes, please. Seriously, thanks for all of your support. It really does help. And for those of you who've supported me, like whether it's financially this year or whether it's just been giving us a thumbs up and reviewing us or subscribing to the channel, I'm so grateful to all of y'all. Thank you for supporting me, and thanks for your comments, and thanks for all of your kind words, and thanks for the criticisms that help me grow. That also is definitely appreciated. God bless you, and let's see. I will see you in the new year. Next year. I'll see you next year.